How to transfer knowledge to design better cities. Hi, my name is Marcin Wojciech-Żebrowski, and this is the newest episode of Urbcast, my podcast about urbanism, architecture, cities, and many more. And today I wanted to invite you to another shorter episode that was created during the Urban Future conference that took place in Helsingborg in the beginning of June. And since I was very honored to be the media partner of the whole conference, I have recorded some inspiring conversations with some of the participants of the conference. Today we will be talking with Piplas, who designs entire cities. He's blending knowledge from academia, including ETH Zurich, and also with the design and professional approach at Drees Sommer in Switzerland, and he is co-directing urban design and planning initiatives at this company. Since Harris has a vast experience in academia from teaching and also experience from designing, we will try to connect those two perspectives in our conversation. I'm asking Harris how to transfer the knowledge from academia to all of the designers so that they can use it, and how to use it effectively. So I think that this is one of the challenges, because we designers, architects, urbanists, and so on, we are so busy with all the projects, with designing, with creating analysis, with designing and just meeting the deadlines, that we sometimes forget that there is a lot of knowledge that can be very useful in our design processes that is already gathered, and it is available, for example, in academia in a form of different papers, studies, and so on and so on. Since I find Harris to be quite a good example of a bridge between those two disciplines, the more professional one, the practical one, the design one, with the academia, this is something I'm really willing to get from him and share this perspective with all of you listening to that episode. So thank you for being here, and let's have another discussion during the Urban Future and Urbcast series in this podcast. Welcome to our talk with Piplas. Harris, thank you very much for finding time. You are quite busy, I guess. You are leaving very soon, so thank you for this opportunity of talking to you. Welcome to Urbcast.
Thank you very much. The pleasure is mine. Glad to share some experience and be part of your podcast series. And yes, we are here at Urban Futures, and it's an incredible diversity of voices, presentations, exhibitions, in the combination with the expo that happens around the whole city. So it's an almost overflow of inspiring information and a lot we can take from here as well.
I would like to talk about your experience, because it's quite vast. It's also an experience from different parts of the urbanism field, urban planning field in general. But right now you are a part of the Drees Sommer group, and you are doing the urban planning and urban design. Maybe let's start here. What is so special about your work that you do right now?
I mean, traditional urban planning in the 20th century led to monofunctional, static cities that are car-oriented, that are sprawling, with informal settlements in different parts of the world, with suburbia and the other parts, with shrinking cities in other, maybe North American or Eastern European context, with a lack of co-creation, with a stronger intensity of mere participation as we know it. And this led me to think that we have to integrate better the economic aspects in order to understand the macroeconomics of a place, to understand a deindustrialization of an area in order to be able to propose any creative city concept. We need to understand the social strata and the cultural layers of a city. So obviously we need more social and sociological knowledge and data, qualitative and quantitative. We need to go beyond this buzzwords of nature-based solution and green infrastructure and really do it. Take the green infrastructure as the main spine for the future city. So in this sense, in my work, I try to intercombine these different elements and add it to what is maybe a more traditional urban design and planning. And in this sense, this kind of integrated urban solutions is an attempt to increase the and amplify the social, economic, and ecological aspects of a place and go beyond just mere planning and design as we may be taught.
Is the integrated and inclusive design kind of within your own unit, or do you think that it is possible to achieve that one only by working with other disciplines?
Our unit is interdisciplinary as well. We have governance experts, we have people who are more experts in the social strata, experts who are more in the economic aspects of real estate, people are policy experts, but we must work with a wide array of external partners. And this is something where we add to our team and according to the needs of the project. With internal experts, we need somebody more of a climate modeling or analysis, or do we need something more on the anthropological level, or we need something more to understand also the economic concepts of a certain urban design scenario. But then also we add external knowledge. So we team up with different other offices. We do not see our friends and colleagues as competitors, but there's a complementary working with together. And in this sense, as pathetic as it sounds, I think all of us has a different set of skills. And there we choose to collaborate and co-create rather than go in this kind of direct competitor modus.
Recently, I've been recording an interesting episode about the role of neuroscience in architecture and urban planning. And I realized that some people were commenting that there is actually a big lack of it in our understanding of how we design, if it comes about the senses and so on. And do you agree with that? And do you think that there are some other things that we are lacking in this constant search for just new projects, new opportunities, new challenges?
Definitely. And unfortunately, definitely. There's in most cases no time to devote to creation of evidence and data and kind of research. So this is why I decided also to conduct a doctoral research and dissertation at the ETH of Zurich in order to be able to improve also my research and analytic skills and add them later to the practical part of my work. And in this sense, I also believe that we should not make a division between practice and research and teaching, but merge these elements to teach the real world case studies rather than generalistic concepts, to combine practice and research or base practice on research. So there's obviously different methodologies how this can be done. In this sense, we do need data, in both qualitative and quantitative, but this is obviously more difficult to be done than said. And for that, I believe the collaborations between universities and design and other practices could help to have the best of these both two worlds, if we consider them two worlds. And that's why we also work with a wide array of universities. And myself, I'm also a guest lecturer in different universities like in Geneva or in Stuttgart, and for many years been teaching at the ETH, etc., in Vienna. So I feel universities are and should be the hubs of innovative knowledge, and they should collaborate more with practices, and this happens too rarely at the moment.
You are a good example of that, transferring the knowledge from the university into the design, into the professional design, into a company, and I guess that also vice versa. So you are connecting those two worlds. What are kind of the most important things that one can learn from another if it comes to those two perspectives, the university one, the educational one, and the kind of professional, let's call it?
Yeah, and that's a good question. And if we just now kind of break it down to architecture and urban design, I would say what typical designers can learn from scientists is to rely less on intuition, on this kind of architectural drive to be this Leonardo da Vinci or whoever who knows and does everything. So a kind of more modest and more neutral and more objective approach of a scientist. And on the other hand, what science can learn, as I observe very often, is to make statements and interpret their own data and not to do this kind of linear, and I've seen it many times, it's just kind of overcrowdedness of research, of data, of diagrams, of infographics, but then having the difficulty to synthesize it and even more difficulties to create a statement out of it. And in this sense, this kind of designer drive could help to the scientists to make more effective decisions and use this vast research they produce, to use it, to utilize it, to implement it.
I'm wondering, because I'm also coming from an urban designer, urbanist background. I'm a part of Henning Larsen company myself, even though I'm working more with business development. But I know that as a designer, it's easy to be stuck with your kind of daily tasks. And even though we might be aware that there's a lot of research tons of knowledge done and we could use it. It's maybe hard to plug in because it might seem to be kind of hidden, because we as designers might not know where to look for it, because we might be a bit scared of maybe the scientific journals and scientific articles, because maybe we can find them too complicated. So what would be like your idea on how the designers could learn and get this data, which is already produced, I guess, in many cases?
They need to learn how to read this data and definitely how to overlap. Because as architects, we obviously do a research of a place when we start a design or an urban plan. Obviously, we kind of assume the ecologies of a place. We assume the social and economic micro networks. We assume the identity. We assume let's say, the lack of economic power or the presence of economic power. So we assume a lot. And if we should stop assuming, stop with assumptions, but read and overlap all this information that we found. And there is, luckily, because of the information technology and the information overflow in the 21st century, there is enough data, even for places where one might think there's no data. There is data in more or less in all part of the world, and we have to learn to read it and to overlap and synthesize and then translate this into a design. And then I would say this would go beyond this. I would say when you read, for example, a text written by an architect about his or her own projects, it's full of playful metaphors and full of, I would say, sometimes with cheesy statements like the glass facade is dancing with the old town and all these kind of things that are somehow funny, but it sounds arrogant for the vast majority of listeners. So if we say, let's, if we design a kind of social infrastructure, then let's base it on real data, with interviews with real people, what their needs are. And in this sense, and if we design a landscape, let's really understand the underlying ecologies of a place and the ecosystem services, and not just, propose some generic park. So in this sense, this is more, I know this is obviously all takes time, and the assignments and the budgets are usually very modest to be able to do this effective task, to have this 10 people team to do the things. But we have to go in this direction. If we listen here with Urban Futures, I've said all the best practices, all the inspiring case study that we heard, most of them are based on this type of approaches, of honest approaches with a place, of honest understanding of Medellin's, of Addis Ababas, of Helsingborg, and these projects that honestly interact with a place, with a genius loci of a place, they usually become these best practices and this spaceship type of architecture from the 90s that is decontextualized. This is, I feel, kind of being archived at the moment, and we can think it's good or bad, but it's what's happening.
Yesterday, you were leading a session, and I've written a quote of the mayor of Porto, who said that city is not a heaven, a city is a hell made of compromises. And I was wondering, how do you use your knowledge in the projects like the Blue City, the integrated urban solutions? Because I know that it is a lot about the compromises. And what is your take on that?
Of course, the session was fantastic. How to turn brownfields into vivid places, and how to turn the session terrible to terrific. And this is, as you mentioned correctly, people who are working on the retrofitting of Westminster, people who are working on the transformation of a dump site in Porto to a vivid public landscape, people who are working on the transformation of tens of hectares of port and industrial use in Stockholm, and the mayor of Porto, Mr. Moreira, who, as you correctly mentioned, made this quote. I have to say I agree with him, because we should stay idealistic and visionary, but what young architect and young urbanist has in her or his head, and maybe with all the best intentions, it does not really fit to the needs of an underprivileged migrant population, of a single mother, of elderly people that have to fight with loneliness and isolation, with, I would say, the hardworking middle class, and that has to work on 2 jobs in order to survive. So sometimes when you see these designs and all the fanciness in it and all this, I would say a kind of hip and good meaning, that you feel like this is only where the late 20 or early 30-year-old kind of hipsters would feel good. And in this sense, we exclude all the other population groups. So in this sense, we try really to as much as possible to go on the ground and understand what's going on there and read about the place, to talk to the people. And usually we are not paid for this task. I have to say that this participation and analysis is not being assigned. So we have to kind of find other ways to cross-financing, to find whatever other ways to make a real analysis and a real kind of honest approach to a place possible. Because we can talk about participation, co-creation and city labs, but as an architect in your office, you're aware of that. If you do an architectural and urban competition, rarely a client asks you to do a 6-month research and pays you for that. So that's the reality, and we have to kind of live in this kind of limited budget world. But we try to really do it, and with a lot of voluntary work, with a lot of, I would say, unorthodox partnerships, just going and hanging out with these people, in free time, to make it up with a lack of funding, a lack of, I would say, formal assignment. So, and sometimes we even do this illegally, if you want. So we have to kind of break planning laws in order to make inclusive places. So in that sense, it's not an easy task. And I think every project is a business kind of case study of itself. And it's very difficult to have this one approach to all the places. So we are there very kind of, I would say, have an understanding of the reality of a place. And this is what we do in Berlin. It cannot be done in Kiev, or it cannot be done in Medellin, or it should not be done in Cape Town.
So as I understand, we shouldn't just overcomplify the complexity and the matrix. But at the same time, we have some tools, as we mentioned already, the data and the technology, digitization, and this is also something you use in your Blue City Integrated Urban Solutions approach. And just to finish that on this note, do you think that we can have too much data input? Can we overdo the data in design?
Of course, we can, and that's why there's all these kind of smart city projects that have been criticized with too many Excel sheets, too many diagrams, too many key performance indicators, but no real change, no real urban transformation. So in this sense, we have to be very aware of, and not to lose the trust of people with kind of overflowing them and exaggerating with all the Excel sheets and again this infographics that really do not mean much to a local mayor or to the local population.
Haris, thank you very much for your time.
It's my pleasure, and look forward to continue our dialogue, and very much looking forward to also hear what are the outcomes of the Urban Futures Conference. And in this sense, I wish you also good luck with your future work, and thank you and your listeners for the attention and for listening.
Thank you very much.